Attendees and viewers, have you ever wondered how orange peel forms on car paint? I have wondered about that. In the past days and weeks, I have spoken with many experts from the automotive, painting, and fruit industries, and I have informed myself about the chemical, physical, and copulating circumstances that lead to the formation of orange peel on paint. And in this video, I would like to explain that to you and answer the question, how on earth does orange peel actually form? So if we want to explain how orange peel forms on paint, there are three scientific theories that are very, very important to understand the whole thing. Because these three theories explain the processes that occur on the paint for orange peel to form. I've also written them down because they are too complicated to remember. The first theory is the so-called solar ray UV light transcendental tendency theory. The second is the so-called color heat transfusion process. And the third is citrus surface diffusion. And we will now discuss these three theories one after the other so that you understand how orange peel forms. The first theory we are talking about here is the so-called solar ray UV light transcendence theory. What is this about? If we imagine that this is the sun is familiar to all of us. It is the 15th planet in our solar system, around which about 3/4 of the planets in this solar system move in an elliptical orbit. So when this sun does what it does, which is to consume planets, stars, dust, and meteors, it devours everything that exists in the universe. And in this context, it must also be said that the sun is not so dissimilar to automotive paint putty, because paint putty also absorbs everything it comes into contact with. And it is exactly the same with the sun in 2001. The sun is a relatively hungry thing.
Yum 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 oh.
And when it then consumes planets, meteors, and other things that are heavily filled with gas, the sun gets bloated. And these bloating lead to chemical and physical combustion processes occurring within this sun, through which the sun has to, so to speak, expel. I have eaten too much again. Wait. Better. These farts are what cause the sun to emit something. This emission can be various things. It can be unpleasant odors, it can be light, it can be heat, it can be UV rays. We experience all these things on Earth when, for example, we get up early on a nice summer day and the sun just starts to shine, and we step out of our house or apartment and notice a slightly rotten smell in the air. Those are indeed the bloating that penetrate from the sun to the earth. But we also have the other things. And among these other things, UV light is what ultimately leads to us having orange peel on the paint. In short, and without getting too scientific, because there are very complicated mathematical equations for this, we have the sun, which emits a sunbeam that hits the earth, has to fight its way through the ozone layer and all other air layers, while the previously mentioned bloating gases help the sunbeam by, so to speak, enveloping it and assisting it in penetrating through this ozone layer. This sunbeam thus reaches the earth. When it comes into contact with the coating, this sunbeam essentially splits into the components of heat, brightness, and UV light. And indeed, the UV light is what ultimately interacts with the coating. And this is the so-called sunbeam UV light transcendence theory, which states that through this process, when the sunbeam hits here, it is then split into the coating and penetrates the surface, truly transcending there. This is the first theory we need to understand in order to explain the existence of orange peel. I have set this whole thing up again as a model so that you can better understand the sunbeam UV light transcendence theory. Here we have a coating surface and here we have the sun. And due to these digestive processes, it now happens that such a sunbeam, these three sticks here represent a sunbeam, now travels towards the earth, penetrates the ozone layer, and then hits a coating surface here. And when it hits a paint surface like this, and by the way, only when it hits paint surfaces, the only other material on Earth that is also susceptible to orange peel is thighs. Fortunately, nothing else in the world gets orange peel from these sun rays here. So the sunbeam hits the paint and then splits off into these three components, and now I have written them down for you so that you can better distinguish them from each other. The UV light, which is the first part, then the heat, and wait a moment, that doesn't belong here, and then the brightness. And these are the three components that then separate from each other on the paint here, and only the UV light It's now being processed further. And this is the solar UV light transcendence theory. The second very important theory in the formation of orange peel is the so-called color heat transfusion process. And this ultimately explains why there is orange peel only on warm paint colors. This is something that many misunderstand because many assume that if they see something orange peel-like, for example, on a black, blue, or green paint, that it is orange peel. But that is wrong because, and this has been scientifically proven, on dark paint colors, what we see is not orange peel, but a so-called paint cellulite. And paint cellulite occurs when the car and the paint on the car become lazy, just lying around at home on the couch, constantly stuffing themselves with sweets, and thus develop this paint cellulite. This must be clearly distinguished from orange peel, because again, the color heat transfer fusion process states that orange peel can only occur on warm paint colors, meaning red, orange, bronze, or yellow, for example. As we said before, through the sunlight UV light transcendence theory, this sunlight hits a paint surface, where it then splits into heat, brightness, and UV light. In this splitting, it is now the case that the UV light, as one of these three components, can only transcend on warm paint colors. Dark paint colors are not capable of this at all, because their darkness simply repels the brightness that is also emitted by this sunlight. Only with warm paint colors does it happen that UV light can transcend into the paint here, because the emitted brightness can serve as a capacitor. On dark paint colors, this brightness is simply repelled. On light paint colors, the brightness is completely and immediately absorbed, and only with warm paint colors does this transcendence process occur. This means that the solar UV light transcendence theory, together with the color heat transfusion process, explains what this sunlight does on warm paint colors and how orange peel can occur at all. We will take another look at this on our model. As we mentioned earlier, this sunlight, which is made up of three components when it hits the paint, is split into brightness, heat, and UV light through the solar UV light transcendence theory. These three components. And now it is the case that only on warm paint colors, here for example, red, does the UV light manage to be further processed and to transcend, because it takes the brightness, the second component, into account. And although it has been emitted, it is then, so to speak, sucked back in here. And then in 2021, the sunlight as a whole is strong enough to penetrate further. And that is exactly what happens in the color heat transfusion process. Now, while it is somewhat understandable with this model, we will take a closer look at the whole thing under the microscope and especially in slow motion, because that makes it easier to understand. And above all, let's first take a look at what happens on a dark paint, where this does not occur, but only on the warm paint. So, as I said, here you see a black surface, and you can already see this groove here, which is from the earlier battles, where this dark surface fights against and defends itself from the sunlight. So this sunlight is coming here now. And just to remind you, we are now in slow motion. You can already see it coming. And just before it appears on the surface, the dark paint surface now says, no, no, I am your color. Then there is a struggle here. So, and the whole thing is repelled. This one falls over, and that's why it cannot happen on dark paint colors 2001. And in comparison, we now have a close-up of a red surface, so a warm paint color. And here again comes this sunbeam, or there are always several sunbeams in that sense that hit there. This is again in slow motion, don't forget. And if this sunbeam hits beside, like here, nothing happens at all. Only when the sunbeam hits this warm paint surface does the process occur here, where these three components are separated from each other, which typically comes with a very, very distinct sound. About like this. And this now explains, seen in close-up, the sunbeam UV light transcendence theory approach in connection with the color heat diffusion process theory. The sunbeam UV light transcendence theory, as well as the color heat transfusion process, fundamentally explain how the basic conditions are created for orange peel to occur in the paint. What actually is the chemical physical propagation process that causes the formation of orange peel is the so-called citrus surface diffusion. That means we said this sunlight comes, it gets split, and only the UV light then penetrates. And only on warm paint colors can it then actually come to the point that the UV light transcends further into the paint. When this happens, it is now due to the additionally split heat component of the sunlight that acid forms on the paint. This acid has approximately the same pH value as an orange or a lemon. This acidic pH value slightly alters the surface structure of the paint. And in combination with the heat, which has been separated, it leads to the paint no longer being smooth, but instead starting to form hills and valleys or develop wrinkles. And because the pH value is very similar to that of an orange or a lemon, the scientists went ahead and named the whole process citrus surface diffusion. We have our model from before again. We had mentioned the sunlight UV light transcendence theory. The sunlight is split into the components of brightness, heat, and UV light. Then only on warm paint colors, the component of brightness is slightly added back in. And then in the context of the color heat transfusion process, component of heat is added back in. And then the sunlight is once again arranged back in its original conglomerate. And now the sunlight can go and essentially penetrate the paint surface here. And then instead of small droplets, this acid is formed here. And this acid reacts so strongly within the framework of citrus surface diffusion that in the end, we have orange peel on warm paint colors. And with that, I hope I was able to explain to you in a clear and simple way how orange peel forms on car paint and why it is only the warm paint colors that suffer from orange peel. If the video was exciting and informative for you, we would really appreciate a thumbs up. Support the channel with a free subscription, and most importantly, don't forget that life isn't always serious. A little bit of fun is necessary, can and should be. Bye. I am truly sorry, but no, I really cannot agree to that.